Probably before the Tunisian revolution, I will just introduce myself as a member of many software engineer. But now things changed, so I'm a very proud Tunisian woman, and as every young in Tunisia, I'm concerned about the situation in my country, and I try to help as much as I can. And all I know is technology and the use of social media, so I try to use those wisely. So that's it.
What would you say about the situation for bloggers right now? Like, it's been a month and a week since the elections. And what is the picture out on the Twitter and Facebook now? What is happening there?
A lot. For bloggers, I think things are much more better. They are free to talk about whatever they want to talk about now. They are really free, and it's for Tunisians. It's a huge step if you can make a joke about the government or a party or something, and yes, finally we can do it. So I think it's getting better for bloggers. About the general situation on Facebook and Twitter, things are crazy because everybody feels concerned, and they are using social media in a very fast, sometimes a good and sometimes a bad way. But now I can say that social media are impacting the whole situation in Tunisia. Some politicians go on public radios or TV shows just to talk about something that people talked about on social media, to explain if it's true or it's not. So now I think it's really important, and even politicians are aware of that and give it a big attention.
Some people use social media in a bad way. What do you mean?
In a bad way, first, sometimes people talk about things that are not true. So I can say, I can assume something, and people share it as a true confirmed information, and that was very bad, especially during the first days in revolution, where every information counts because the life of people was in danger. And now they are using social media to attack other peoples. They are doing stuff with Photoshop. It's crazy how they can take, for example, lately they took a picture of Samir Dilu. He's a leader in another party. They took a picture, and they, I think it's fake. In the picture we can see that he's staying with people with lots of beer and alcohol. But it's fake. It's so people and they are even talking about the personal life of politicians or bloggers, which is bad. We don't care about their private life. They even share personal papers or something. They did share a paper of the leader of Al-Mu'tamar party, one of the biggest parties in Tunisia, the paper of his divorce with his French wife, which is, we do not care about. This is private. So, and people believe those things very fast. So that's the very bad, I think, in my personal point of view, the bad use of social media.
So perhaps there should be a bigger discussion about using social media as a source for information. That's one of the areas that you are interested in.
I apologize for my voice, but It sounds extremely serious when I speak like this.
You sound like a godfather.
I sound like the godfather. I think that right up to my mouth. Now I sound like it's a devil movie. I think one of the things that I was interested in about coming today is that I've been following the use of social media, not just in what's been happening in North Africa, but also going back to the Iranian elections in 2009, and the ways in which, not necessarily the use of social media in those countries, but also the ways in which the way we talk about the use of social media in those countries, because I see it as being two interesting, connected, but different things. One is the way in which you use social media in Tunisia to organize protest, for dissent, for political information, but then also the ways in which social media is utilized by journalists outside of those countries to gather information. So one is the spread of information within the country, and the second angle is the spread of information from inside the country to outside. Now, when I was listening to what was happening in Tunisia, in Egypt, in Libya, and also in Iran, what I noticed was I followed all of these events on Twitter and on Facebook. And what I noticed was a pattern in each country. I got, in the early days of the revolution, particularly in Libya and in Egypt, it was interesting. What happened to Mubarak and what happened to Gaddafi supposedly was exactly the same thing. They were in Angola, both of them. They were both dead. No one knew what happened to their children. And the amount of rumors flying around about what was going on in Cairo and what was going on in Tripoli were very, very similar. There's a lot of misinformation being spread through social media. So I think when we talk about these things, it's important to differentiate between the use of social media for political organization within the country and the use of social media for the spread of information out of the countries. So in the case of Tunisia, for example, I know that, for example, you're involved with training people for the use of technology, training people how to set up web pages. That's a very, very different question from the ways in which we Westerners follow what happens in these countries from the comfort of our offices and our buildings here in Stockholm. Because I think it was interesting, I was at the CETA meeting a couple of weeks ago with all of the North African bloggers. And one of the interesting comments made to me was that I think a lot of the obsession or the interest in this technology is that we're sort of proud that these technologies that we've developed here in the West are now being used in these contexts. So I think that a sort of balanced discussion about the pros and the cons of both the use of technology, but also to make a very clear distinction between the ways in which it's used internally versus externally. And another interesting final comment, because I know it's terrible to listen to me speaking like this, is also a realization that the technology can also be used for surveillance by the powers in those countries. I mean, Iran is very, very effective in the use of this. But also I spoke to someone from Egypt who was telling me that when the protests in Tahrir Square really started going, there were leaflets being sent around saying, do not post the meetings to Facebook or Twitter, because they will immediately be discovered by the security forces. So spread them by word of mouth only. No writing, no electronic information. So I think that, I mean, as an academic, I'm not an expert about North Africa, North African politics. But as an academic, what's interesting to me is the very, very different ways in which we understand technology, the ways in which we define technology and how it's used. And we need to be very clear that when we talk about social media, we need to be very clear about which social media we're talking about, who is using it, and to what purpose. And to also realize that social media can be just as much a tool for repression as it can be for freedom and enlightenment.
Rabab, I know that you know things about how the surveillance has been working in Tunisia, especially before the revolutions. But
some websites were not working in Tunisia at all. YouTube, for example, is not working since I don't know when it's not working. We know Dailymotion, YouTube, where you can publish videos or something about the president, they are not working. The days of the revolution, lots of Facebook pages was also banned, and they even used very simple ways for surveillance. They used people, some students, for example, to just surf on the net and survey their friends and the pages they are seeing. There are so many ways when we talk about techniques in technology to ban websites and to survey the content. Sometimes you just use some words. It's like in the telephone surveys. You can't use some words. So if it's there, whoop, it's not found. It's page not found. So that kind of stuff. We do have YouTube.
You do have YouTube now? Okay.
And it was Ben Ali who decided to give us back YouTube. Yes, one day before he's gone. Yes. Yeah, he was so desperate, he even gave us YouTube and all sites. All websites.
Was it January 13th? January 13th?
Yes.
Okay.
The final speech.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But is there any surveillance that you can notice now?
Well, to be clear, there's always surveillance.
Yes.
Not just for our countries, even in your countries, but I don't think it's the same way it was before. So now, no. Because instead of surveillance, they are using their own social media tools. So it's just another attack. Okay, you have a Facebook page, I'll create 10 to attack you. So that's the new surveillance, maybe.
I'm very skeptical to social media, and I use it mostly for contacts. I'm the correspondent for Swedish Broadcasting, South Europe, but I'm also covering the Maghreb area, the French-speaking, Arab-speaking area in North Africa. And I've been traveling to Tunisia like 5 times. I was there the first time like 3 days after Ben Ali fell. So that's why I was interested in the date, because I know there was a big detention of bloggers January the 7th. A lot of people were arrested, asked what they were doing, why they were blogging and so forth, and then he realized he had to release it. But I'm not using social media in the way that I look at Twitter, I look at it sometimes, but it's more, I'm Facebooking. For example, the street vendor, Mohammed Bouazizi, his sister and I, we Facebook to each other, and I meet her regularly when I go there. His cousin lives in the south. He still lives in Sidi Bouzid, the city where he burned himself to death and actually set fire to this Arabic Spring. His cousin is still in Kairouan and in Sidi Bouzid, and so I meet with him or contact him on Facebook, and we meet with his friends. And it's an easy way of getting contacts. And there are groups on Facebook, so forth. But as you say, you don't really know who's writing what and for what purpose. So I prefer to actually, which I did the first time when I was there, establish contacts with people who have been, I would say, the older generation, because everyone is talking about young generation making this revolution. But I think they are actually kids to an older generation who should be given credit, exactly, a lot of credit for this revolution, because they actually raised the kids to be brave and so forth, because they have been in prison. Many of them have been in prison, these parents. They've been fighting as women or in human rights lawyers, for example. I think it's interesting also to give some facts about Tunisia, because there were already before Ben Ali fell, there were like 3 million or more than 3 million internet users out of 10 million in the population. So it says something how many internet users there were. On the same time, Tunisia was on the list of enemies of internet, and were always in Reporter Without Borders booklet. of being one of the 12 horrible countries in the world. Libya was taken off because there were 13 from the beginning. And there were like 2 official servers in the country, and Ben Ali had control over everything in the country until the revolution came. But I use Twitter, for example, to be updated what is the conversation on social media, but I don't rely on it and I don't work out of it. And I know there have been ups and downs since the revolution in January. In May, there were a lot of detentions again. I met with several people with broken necks, broken legs. Police had hit them at the big avenue in Tunis. So there were a lot of, and people were detained also. And there were people detained, for example, for pornographic pages and other pages that didn't please, or people were, like the people in power were worried that they were using things that they should not be using. But not this political debate. It wasn't really the threat at the time. But Facebook, I think, is easy way of having contact, keep contact, send things, and but all this Twitter, and there's just a signature from someone, and you don't really know who's writing. Je me méfie. I'm a little bit reluctant to that. My experience from traditional media is La Presse, which is a French-speaking newspaper, which has been quite updated and quite useful for me, because they are sort of, it's the master's voice, it's a state-owned paper, but it's still quite strict, and it's not very, they try to actually write freely, and I went to see them last time, and when I asked them about democracy and what do you think about Ennahda Ennahda winning now, and do you think there's going to be a green wave? They got completely furious and they threw me out, actually, because they were saying, don't destroy our hope, and we are very hopeful now, and they wanted to look upon things in a good way. But there are two French-speaking papers you can see in the street. That one is private. It's called oh, I forgot the name now. La Presse. And then there are some Arabic-speaking ones, and then there are, of course, private-owned and state-owned television. A lot of people would look at Al Jazeera, Egyptian television, and then there are radio stations. And when I was down in Hadjab El Ayaboun, it's a city down, a small town down south, I went to see a local radio station, and they were very. It was quite interesting because they were working with social media, and everything they were reporting, they were sort of working, getting in information through social media, through Facebook, and they were broadcasting things. So they were making sort of public over the radio a conversation that was on social media, you could say. And very, very ambitious guys, and they really want to make another voice. They really want to keep up a local democracy, and very ambitious, actually. I think a lot of radio is still a very important medium because it's so easy, and it stays very close to people.
And Rabab, how would you describe how the traditional media has changed in Tunisia since the revolution?
Not much. Yeah, to be honest, well, they are trying.
Don't you think La Presse is a bit better now?
Yes, they are trying.
You don't read it.
Yeah, probably. No, they are all trying, but with the rise of social media, with what we are seeing in Al Jazeera or Al Arabiya or France 24, it's not enough, and the traditional official media have no excuse anymore. We said before that it's because of the regime, they are controlling them. Now they have no excuses, so people are watching them, and they still make some thoughts, and what we want is to have a powerful media, and we don't need to watch Al Jazeera. We want to see our local news on our local TV. Sometimes something very big happened, and you have to wait till 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. And even in that news, you have to wait for the third or fourth news so they can talk about it, which is not acceptable anymore.
I think there's another thing to add to the Tunisian media picture is that Tunis, the capital, and the coast, Sousse, Hammamet, these more posh places, that's where you have the elite. A lot of them read French, so they would look at France 24, the TV station, or they will read any media, French press as well. And then you have the inner side, or the rural side of Tunisia, which is Sidi Bouzid, where Mohammed was living, Mohammed Bouazizi, and others. And they will actually rely quite a lot on social media, much more, I think, because when I came the first time to Mohammed Bouazizi's family, it was 5 days after Ben Ali fell. I came to his family. It's when I met his sister the first time, and they were sitting with a computer in one of the bedrooms, very low-key living, you could say. But they were sitting with a computer, and they had a Facebook side, and they had made a Facebook side where they had put Mohammed's face instead of Ben Ali's face. So he was standing with all these things, and he was the king of Tunisia on that side. And they had also made one page where he was on all the notes, monument notes. So they had been doing things. And I think in the south and in the rural areas, in these smaller towns, Kairouan, Sidi Bouzid, the other city with the radio, where there are a lot, like 50% of them are without jobs. Young men, very frustrated. They are very much using social media and communicating over social media, I think. So that's also a picture. It's very divided, Tunisia. You have to. A lot of people are educated, but it's also very divided socially.
What about the people who don't use social media? Talking about the process before the elections and the result of the elections, maybe. What role do you think social media played there?
I think, as she said, we are really divided as a society, because I heard on TV just days before the election, they were talking to some people from rural areas, and they just said we don't get anything to those elections, and they just can't understand the whole process. But they are going to vote, because we know that those elections are very emotional. It's related to how much you love your country, and it's very special. So that's why the rates of vote were very high. So people just rely on other people, sometimes ask their children, I need to vote to whom, or for example, lots of people vote for Nahda because they are Muslims. It's that religious thing. They vote for people who also give them money because people are poor, and this is a reality. So if you promise a job or even some money, they will vote for you. So this is the bad side of the elections, maybe. Yeah.
The comments that are just made here by two of the speakers, I think it also reminds us that there are still borders that exist. I mean, geography and countries and laws still matter. I think in a lot of the discussion about new technology, we talk about a borderless society. But I mean, what's happened in Egypt? What happens every day in my home country, the United States? What happens in Sweden with FRA? It tells us over and over again that while we talk about borderless society, we live in a world really ruled by laws and borders still. And I mean, also this idea about local news, local information. It says again that people are interested in what happens in their local area. So what you have is also a conflict between a discussion about technology as being global, but the interests are still very national and very local. And you know, if you look at what happened in Egypt as a very good example, you had a global flow of information about what was going on in Tahrir Square. There was a global flow, but the elections and what's happened after the revolution has shown that local politics, local economic interests are still very determining factors in how the revolution ends. You can have a global coverage of the revolution. It can be on Twitter, it can be on Facebook, it can be on Al Jazeera. But you still have the Muslim Brotherhood, you still have different political parties fighting for positions in the countries. So I think, again, since we're talking about social media, it's very, very important to remember that social media are themselves very influenced by local laws. Mubarak shut off the internet. That's a national decision. Access to the internet is a question of economics and education. These are national questions. There's also the question of language. We're standing here speaking English, but what if you don't speak English? The vast majority of the material on the internet is not accessible to you. You can't read it if you don't speak French or English or Chinese or Cantonese or Mandarin. Most of the internet is meaningless. So these are also sort of boundary questions. And so it's also this balance between the possibilities, the global possibilities of technology, and the local and the national sort of reality.
Yeah, I totally agree. Even in Tunisia, the results of the elections, if you just surf on Twitter, on Facebook, because on social media it's all the time the, what we call them, elite talking with their big ideas of freedom and democracy, but what I personally learned after the elections in Tunisia, that my people are poor, they are hungry, those people need to eat, nothing much. To be honest, they don't care about democracy, they don't even know the meaning of the word, those people want to eat, that's it. And yeah, that's a big determinant fact in the results of the election in both countries.
Let's not forget, as a platform, I would say, correct me, but the mosques were actually, the mosques were actually running all the time under Ben Ali, so people could actually meet in the mosque and talk, although they were not allowed to really be politicized. But that's why this Ennahda Nakhta certainly won a lot of votes, like 43% in the election in Tunisia. You would expect, with all this debate about democracy and so, that other parties would have won much more, but no, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the mosques are actually a very strong platform to communicate.
You know, Tunisia is special in that area because Ben Ali made of the Islamists the #1 enemy.
The party.
Yes, the party, and that was very easy for him because of the Algerian experience back in the 90s. Algeria was, it was a real war, terrorism, and so yes, we were afraid of terrorism. So it was very easy to make of the Islamists a #1 enemy. You should know that people like me, girls, veiled girls, didn't have the right to work in public administrations. Sometimes when you go to university, someone, the university police will kick you out just because you are veiled. So it's absolutely normal after the revolution that people who felt private from their religion, they will be easily affected by someone who's talking about religion. So it's normal, I guess.
The imams were named by the Ministry of Education by Ben Ali, but they could still talk. The control wasn't 100% in the mosque. And that's why the party was so well organized, because you have a mosque in every corner, and that was nothing wrong to go for a prayer or so. Which remained a whole network, the strongest network in the society, you could say. And today, a lot of imams have been replaced, some of them brutally. Salafists have been trying to throw them out brutally. Others have just been replaced by more religious imams, and they don't want this state-placed or state-installed imam. So I think about 50, 60, 70% nowadays, just in 8 months, 9 months, were changed, actually, the imams, replaced.
Yes. It's funny, it's because when they talk in the pray, they will pray for the president and they will talk about how much good he is. I don't blame him, to be honest. Yes, because those people could get killed or president, and people now are just, it's like a vengeance. People are kicking them out. So I can't blame either sides. But yeah, they are not only imams. Every boss in every big company in the country was kicked out. Yes, brutally. Yes.
Some of you and many others, as part of some kind of young internet generation, were you surprised by the results of the elections, and were you in some way disappointed, or?
Disappointed, I don't want to go there. But yes, pretty much surprised. And maybe I was surprised because based to social media, I was expecting something else. At least we all know that Nahda will win. That was very clear from the beginning. But some other faces, we expected to see them, and some others, there was no way, nobody will elect him. For example, the former foreign minister of Ben Ali, he was elected in the assembly, and he was elected in his region, so it's something regional. You elect someone from your region. We didn't expect him to win or to be elected. Some businessmen too were elected, and if you take except Nahda and Takatul and the three big parties, all other parties, if you dig, you'll see that every head of party won in his own hometown.
That is kind of funny, because if you were trying to follow the process via Facebook and Twitter, you got kind of the wrong picture of where the elections was going to end. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. But about the future now, then, no one of us can say what role social media really played in the revolutions and all of this, but what do you think about the future?
The future in general, I think we have to be optimistic. At this time, we do not have other choices. We have to be optimistic. We started the fight and we will continue. And we make it very clear, and through social media, for the elected people, that we did elect you, and at any moment, we can do the same thing as we did with Ben Ali, and you are working for us. It's over, the dictatorship thing, feeling like you are the president of the universe. Now it's over. So I'm pretty much optimistic about the future. Social media, I think it's changing the whole world. It reminds me about the time everybody has a cell phone. Now everybody has a Twitter account and Facebook. All media, the traditional media now have their own Twitter account, Facebook, Fosfantkat, Al Jazeera Al Arabiya, CNN. They are using social media. So finally, it's gonna be part of the future. We have to be wise when using them. It's not the use of social media right now. It's up and down. So we have to be wise in using them. But I think they will be part of our future. And as I said before, they are making impact in politics now. In my country, at least, and in Egypt too.
During the revolutions, there were lots of discussions, for instance, here at the Foreign Ministry, about giving state aid to net activism and stuff like that. So the Arab Spring has been a big thing in the whole world, and in many countries, people are thinking, can we assist them in any way, or should we not get involved?
Tricky question.
What's your spontaneous reaction to that?
one tricky question. You know, when you do a revolution, and as you said, the whole world is talking about you, of course you feel like you are free and you do not want any interfering in your internal matters. But let's face it, let's be realistic. There is USA, your home, I'm sorry, your home country, I'm sorry, they are interfering everywhere, Europe, all those powerful countries, but at least we are trying to decrease that amount of interfering and make it more like collaboration, which is, I know I'm saying, but yes, I'm a realistic person. I'm 100% sure they are still interfering in our matters. I want to talk about something, about media, especially the French media and their reaction when Nahda wins and won, and then Sharia in Libya, and now with the Brotherhood in Egypt. It was a mass attack against us. They even call it the Arab Winter and the Arab Fall. First of all, if we are talking about democracy, they have to respect the choice of people. And we do have international people to assist the elections. And we are, either I like the results of the elections or not. I know that it was the full transparency in the elections. And also when your country was providing Ben Ali regime with the gas bombs, and we all hear it, their foreign ministry talking about helping the regime with their police expertise. I think you don't have the right anymore to attack us in a very bad way. And that was really bad, and we answered badly too on social media. Because we feel it was humiliating to us, and that it's not possible. What we want is people to hear everybody. It's okay if I don't care what's your personal point of view, but as a journalist, as media, you have to hear everybody. So that's what we want from the Western, at least.
So not that kind of reaction in the media then, when the Islamists are winning. But maybe some education for journalists in Tunisia would be a good idea. Jonathan, could you tell us a bit about what Reporters Without Borders are doing in Tunisia now?
Sure. Just let me, and I don't know if this is a question, but coming from an ICT4D perspective, and regarding this discussion around borders, I'm just wondering how you, because even if there is an elite, even if we all agree that there is an elite who is connected to Twitter, or we have a problem with languages, for example, could you really say that a person with Twitter or a Facebook account do they only affect each other? Or could you say that it spreads even to other people? So even if there's an elite who has the direct access, if it's so, to technology or language, does that matter for the society as a whole? Could that have an impact, even if, I mean, everyone is not on board?
Yes, it's really important. I saw normal people every day, and in the market you hear them talking. Did you see that person on that Facebook video? So people are affected by that, even if they have no access. Very old women and men, and you know that they don't master technology or social media, but still they hear it or just watch it with their children or something. Yes, it's affecting our daily lives too much. Yes, yes.
The Arab Spring was a very fantastic opportunity for press freedom to spread in a region of the world which, well, to be quite honest, didn't have much. What we have been doing is actually quite amazing, because up until this revolution, we had no presence from Reporters Without Borders in these countries. But starting in October of this year, we have actually a local office in Tunisia, working together with press organizations, press and media organizations in that country, to hopefully influence legislation, hopefully educate journalists on what it means to be a journalist in a free society. It's easy to get carried away, right? You know, when things are happening like they did this spring. But there are some areas, even if YouTube are now allowed. For example, there is filtering in Tunisia, but it's aimed towards pornography. But the danger, from our point of view, is that as long as you have a filtering system in place, that can be used for other purposes as well, and that the temptation to do so will be so much stronger if you have the technical capability to do it. So that is one area that we work with in Tunisia. Also, there was a television channel who aired the Persepolis, a film by an American-Iranian director based on a comic. And there was a terrible uproar, and that television station, of course, received a lot of criticism on the basis that it was anti-Islamic. So there are a lot of issues for press freedom in Tunisia, but I believe that, right, and I'm extremely happy that we do have a presence there now, and hopefully we can help make a difference. I don't know, for those of you who were here have already heard it, but today Reporters Without Borders released a report. I think we have a couple of copies on that table over there, on this region specifically, on what's happened and where we are regarding press freedom. So I urge anyone who is interested in it to grab a copy, and if they run out, because it's very good, you can also find it online on our website.
It's complicated for an Arab community, so yes, I totally agree with you when you say you filter pornography, but you have, it's the same tool, so you can filter anything. But if you ask any Tunisian parent, he will say, yes, I am with that filter. Also, Persepolis, I think that wasn't very clever to broadcast it in that period, because it's easy. You have big issues, economy, politics, and you just want people to talk about those other things. I think it will come, but progressively. And it's a challenge, but it will come one day. In a progressive way, not right way.
It's a political statement to say that it was a stupid timing for it, of course, because of course there were several women in Tunis who would say, excellent, trying out where the limits are now for freedom of speech. And so Tunisia is testing its way, that's very clear, and this was one case of testing it. And women today, you could say that Nahda is won the election and that they are leading, but there are also protests that they are taking a lot of power now. And yesterday was a big demonstration. Today again, okay. There are big demonstrations these days. They are actually collecting too much power around themselves. And women, modern women taking a beer, going in blue jeans, not wearing the veil in Tunis, they are very afraid of their freedom of speech and possibility to pronounce themselves. So that's also one trench in the society. It's important to stress, actually, because that was also very apparent during this Persepolis story, which was quite violent. It was a TV boss who was really threatened to death almost.
You asked about the future, about social media, and one thing that struck me is that we have to remember that what happened in North Africa with Twitter and Facebook, the content of that social media was one thing, but the second thing is what those social media symbolized, and it's the release of the power of control over information on the part of the state. How that power is used is a different question. In the same way, I would argue that WikiLeaks challenged the power of the United States government to control information. Two very different political situations, but it's the same essential question. Who has the right to control the flow of information and to account for transparency? And I think what's been happening with social media in North Africa and in the United States has been a challenge to the ways in which states think about the relationship between citizens and information.
We are fighting for transparency and who's taking over the information in the protests today. One of the demands is that the assembly sessions would be broadcasted live. Yes, and we want an open government for that. And about women's rights, don't worry, let them just try. And you see.
I'm not talking on behalf of myself. I'm talking on behalf of many women.
I know that huge story, but all of us are concerned, and we won't allow anybody, no one, to take back our rights, and we will ask for more rights. But for me, I ask for the rights of a human being before. Because I saw some people against the woman you are talking about publishing on Facebook now pictures of very poor women wearing I don't know what or carrying something on their back and just commenting on it. Those women want to be equal, not to men, to women. So for me, I know this is really important, and I'm not the kind of person, I know what's meaning the rights of women, but for me we have economy, the question of the economic issues, and parties, they do not have solutions, and what they are playing this game, they want us to talk about the other stories and to forget about economy. Very soon we will have 1 million people unemployed in Tunisia. We are 10 million. No one is talking about economy. No one. This assembly, they are not talking yet about economy. What we are talking about either women should wear niqab in universities or not, either women should have 50% of heritage with men. And no one is talking about 1 million unemployed people in the very near future. Oh, and by that we say thank you to the panel.